A federal judge in Arizona reverses himself. He had previously come out and said that the Arizona Ballot Watchers had some free speech protections. They were sitting out there, they were monitoring the public space, and the judge said, there's only so much I can do about this. Before, the judge held a hearing and then reversed himself. We've previously talked about this case, went through the judge's entire rationale for why he said that the ballot watchers had free speech. But suddenly, after a big extensive hearing that took place on Tuesday, November 1st, it went most of the day all the way up until about 5:30. The judge issued a ruling, came back out and reversed himself in a pretty dramatic way, including requiring the individuals to post specific messages on True Social, which we'll see from this order. The temporary restraining order was granted against Clean Elections United States of America, listed as defendants sued by the Arizona Alliance for Retired Americans. This opinion and order coming out of the District of Arizona Federal Court, 4 pages, and we spent the time explaining what got us here. But after a big long hearing, this is what the judge decided. The judge says, for the reasons stated on the record, it is ordered granting the parties stipulated restraining order. And that's a very important word there, stipulated. That means that both sides are sort of agreeing to this. They're actually having a conversation about this. It's an agreed upon order. Now, we weren't there on the record. There are, I'm sure, transcripts, and a lot of this stuff I'm presuming was on the record. There's a possibility that some of this stuff was done off the record, but I would guess that it was done on the record. But it sort of is meaning that both sides have agreed upon an outcome on this. Now, why might one side agree to something they don't want to do? Well, because of leverage. That's because one side has more power than the other side. And they say, if you don't do this thing, things are going to get a whole lot worse for you. So why don't you just agree to this outcome, and we can just save each other a whole bunch of time. So it could go one way or the other, right? Clean Elections could say, we've got all this power and leverage, and so we're going to do what we're going to do, or we're going to make your lives miserable, Arizona Alliance for Retired Americans, or vice versa. Arizona Alliance for Retired Americans could say, we've got the backing of, millions of dollars of lawyers and legal money and whatever, and we're going to sue you. Or if you don't agree to this stipulated order, they could theoretically say, we're going to sue all of you individually, right? We're going to come after you and you and you, and we're not here to deal with your organization anymore. We'll just go right after you, right? So there's all sorts of threats that are being bandied about. And we saw this yesterday on the clip from Mark Elias, the founder of Democracy Docket, who said that if you violate the law, you're going to end up in court. And we said, that makes sense, right? Nobody's talking about violating the law here. Everybody's talking about complying with the law and just making sure the elections are conducted appropriately without any funny business going on. But they were very upset about these ballot watchers. They didn't want them there. And they had a big, long, extensive hearing. The judge originally said, there's nothing I can do about this. We fast forward like 24 hours. The judge does a total reversal. And here's what he says. Defendants, Clean Elections, their officers, their agents, their servants, employees, and everybody else they know or have ever talked to or even thought about are restrained from engaging themselves or training, organizing, encouraging, or directing others while monitoring the drop boxes to do any of the following. You see A, B, C, and D. We've got 4 items here. And this is saying that they're not allowed to do it. They're not allowed to show other people how to do it. They can't encourage it. They can't direct others to do it. So encouraging, posting on social media, giving somebody a high five at a coffee shop. You can't do anything connected to this. So it is taking that entire organization off the playing field to do anything of the following, A through D. A, they are not allowed to intentionally enter within 75 feet of a ballot drop box or the entrance to the building where the drop box is located. Okay, well, that's not that big of a deal, right? They were sort of kind of doing that anyways, right? I think they were quite a ways away. All right. B, they cannot engage themselves or train or encourage or show or do anything to anybody that does the following: intentionally follow individuals delivering ballots to the drop box when such individuals are not within 75 feet of a drop box. So if other people, okay, so there's like the 75-foot buffer zone, but what about the people who are coming to the 75-foot buffer zone? Can they, if they're outside of the ballot drop box, force field, 75-foot force field, and somebody's walking up to the force field, can they intervene that person there and catch him there or her? No, because it's delivering ballots to the drop box while they're not quite there yet. Now, the same individuals, the court says, unless spoken to or yelled at first, they're not allowed to encourage, do anything remotely connected to speaking or yelling at an individual who the defendant knows, meaning Clean Elections, who they know is returning ballots to the drop box. And 2, who is within 75 feet of the drop box. So it's just conversation. Don't yell at them. If they yell at you, you can yell at them, but not vice versa. And then D, it says openly carry firearms within 250 feet of the ballot drop box, or visibly wear body armor within 250 feet of a ballot drop box. So we have the 75-foot force field. If people are approaching the 75-foot force field, can't touch them. But if people are within 250 feet of a ballot drop box, right? So you can exist anywhere between 75 and 250 feet in that buffer zone. So it's like, if we have like concentric circles, right? So the idea would be like, you have, this is the ballot box. We draw that there. You have a 75 radius. This is going to look maybe problematic, but you have a 75-foot radius here that you are not allowed to go into. And then you have another circle on the outside that will sort of, from this area to this area is 250 feet. And so you've got the difference where you cannot have any body armor. You can physically be in this area, but you cannot have any physical body armor or weapons or anything visible in that area. So if you do want body armor and all of that stuff, that's only okay outside this area. Otherwise, you can hang out in this area, and you just can't do it with the body armor. Yeah, people are saying I did a nice job fixing what that could have potentially become. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Now, you can understand that this can be problematic, of course, because these areas are a little bit fluid and people are moving back and forth, and I'm sure they're not taping out a specific 250-foot radius, and what is 75 and what is body armor and who saw the body armor and all that stuff. So there's a contingency here. It says, but defendants shall not be in breach of this order, meaning the Clean Elections people, if they accidentally and unknowingly reveal a concealed firearm or concealed body armor, right? So there's sort of a contingency there. Now, they're saying, well, what if it was an accident? Judge says, look, if it's a real accident, I'm not going to hold you in violation of this order. And they said, well, we want that in writing. So put that in writing. So this is how this stuff works, right? There's negotiations back and forth. The plaintiffs go over to the defense and they say, well, hang on, we want you to do this. These distances we think are appropriate. And they say, well, what if there's an accident? So they go talk to the judge. The judge says, okay, I'll put this sentence in here. How does that work? Okay, great. The court continues. They say that Clean Elections, the defendants shall, within 24 hours of the date of this order, and this has already been done, post the following in a conspicuous place on Clean Election USA's website and on the Truth Social page. So you have a judge now who's ordering people to make posts on their Truth Social accounts, specifically at Trumper Mel, and leave it posted through the close of voting on Election Day 2022. The following must be posted on the account. The judge says, you must say, it is not always illegal to deposit multiple ballots in a ballot drop box. It is legal to deposit the ballot of a family member, household member, or person for whom you are the caregiver. Here are the rules for ballot drop boxes by which I ask you to abide. The judge says, The preceding statement should also be followed with a link to the Arizona Revised Statutes, which has the law associated to it. A copy of this temporary order and link also must be posted. So the judge says, you better get back there and you better type that into your truth account. Now, this order says that the proceeding shall not prohibit Clean Elections from changing its name, its domain name, or anything else like that, as long as they post the same message through the close of voting. So now this goes back over to the plaintiffs, and they say, well, what if Clean Elections just like changes their name? Like, what if Trump or Mel just changes her name to Trumper Melody, all right, and then just reposts a bunch of this stuff? And the judge says, well, if they do that, well, if they can change it, but they've got to repost it exactly where they go. So they say defendant Melody Jennings, okay, that's the individual here, shall post on the Truth Social page Trumper Mel the following statement. So the judge says, you have to go tell your followers that you've been a no-no to them. It's almost like the Scarlet Letter. Remember that book you had to read when you were a kid? You've done something bad, and so you have to be branded as being an insurrectionary liar, misinformationer. You have to post the following statement and leave it posted through the close of voting day on your Truth account, saying any past statement that it is always illegal to deposit multiple ballots in a ballot drop box is incomplete. A family member, a household member, or a caregiver can legally do so, along with a copy of the entire Arizona law and a copy of the link to this order. Yeah, because the judge just thinks that everybody is just too stupid out there. You know, hey, your stupid Truth Social followers are so idiotic that, you know, they just do whatever you tell them to do. They have no idea what is true, what's fake, whatever. So I have to correct the record because that's what happens in this country now. Everybody just corrects the record. You know, we just have to go post something and fix this. Judge says defendant's agreement to the entry of this partial order shall not be construed as an admission by the defendants. Okay, so as I said, this is a stipulated agreement, which means that the defendants here, Clean Elections, they sort of agreed to this for some reason, right? They said, well, all right, maybe they were being threatened with personal lawsuits. Maybe the judge said, I am very unhappy with what I saw. Don't know exactly what happened yet, but they are agreeing to this, and then they went and posted it. So they are acquiescing on this to some degree. But they're not admitting that they did anything wrong, right? They're putting that in here. They're saying, all right, yes, we'll do this stuff, but none of this shall be construed as an admission by us that we've engaged in any of the activities that this order prohibits, or is this an admission that any of those activities would be contrary to the law? Okay, so they're saying, look, we'll do this stuff. We're not admitting we did anything wrong. It continues from the court. No person who has notice of this order shall fail to comply with it, nor shall any person subvert the order by sham, indirection, or other artifice. This order applies to their defendants, their officers, agents, servants, and anyone else in active concert or participation with them. Notwithstanding that, the defendants shall not be held liable or in contempt based solely on the violation of this order over whom the defendants do not have actual control. Right, so sort of breaking this out, saying, look, you're not liable for everybody else. The restraining order will go into effect immediately and shall remain in effect for 14 days. And the posts were completed. They complied with those orders. The judge says, it is further ordered that the court enters the temporary restraining order proposed and contested by the defendants. Furthermore, they are restrained from directing others or from engaging, organizing, or training or participating in active concert any of the following. In connection with a specific claim that individuals committed the F word based solely on the fact that they deposited multiple ballots in the drop box, post, or online. Okay, they say, if this organization is believing that individuals committed problems, they shall not post online or otherwise disseminate images, recordings, any personal image about those individuals. Similarly, they can't post about their identity, any distinguishing features, their license plate, model, make, or car, or anything like that. Similarly, if they're within that 75-foot zone, they cannot take photos or otherwise record individuals. And it says that the defendants over at Clean Elections, similarly, shall cease and desist making false statements about Arizona revised statutes now through the end of Election Day. This is going to go into effect immediately, and it shall remain in effect for 14 days. Signed here by Michael T. Liberty, who had a very, very different take just a mere 24 hours ago. In fact, just 24 hours ago, he said that there were free speech concerns and protections that were very important to preserve, and that the individuals in this lawsuit had not demonstrated how a remedy could be appropriate to resolve this. Let's take a look at the court docket on this case to see if there's been anything new that popped out recently. Transcript request came in. We have minute entries that came in. Sealed declarations also are here. Now, here's the entry. Well, that was all yesterday. We covered all of that. There was a big hearing, and you can see the hearing took place from 12:14 to 5:31 p.m. yesterday. And the judge issued his ruling. So now that that has taken place, we see that the Democracy Docket folks are very excited about this. This is what the post looked like from Trumper Mel. Trumper Mel ordered to make this post on True Social. You see here, she did that on True Social under the account @TrutherMel, saying, AZ, it is not always illegal to deposit multiple ballots in a ballot box, blah, 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 blah. Says any past statement that it's always illegal is incomplete. A family member is legally allowed to do so. I have never stated otherwise, she says. See the attached statute. That's the law. Okay, so Trumper Mel complied. And Democracy Docket is very excited about this. Of course, spiking the football, saying, look what we made her do. Oh, yeah. Mark Elias is very happy, probably petting his dog vigorously. He loves his dog. There's pictures of his dog behind him, literally his dog. Democracy Docket says, as required by federal court order, Clean Elections USA Melody posted on True Social that there are multiple reasons why Arizona voters can legally return more than one ballot after her group baselessly accused individuals of being ballot mules. Right. That's Mark Elias, Democracy Docket. Okay. I've been pounding the table about this organization for 2 years now. The Republicans better get their act together, or they're going to continue to get steamrolled by the Democrat lawyers. Ugh. All right. So that's Democracy Docket. Now, after that all happened, Liberty of Lions also withdrew. Jack Healy from the New York Times posted this. He says that the Lions of Liberty came out with an update. The Lions of Liberty report to their organization. They say, as many of you know, we've been facing pending litigation due to Operation Dropbox. The hammer has unfortunately fallen. We, the Lions of Liberty, have been named in a federal lawsuit. True. Unfortunately, we were named with other organizations with whom we have no association and whose desire for law and order is much less than ours. Due to this fact and possible restraining orders, we are stepping down on the sponsorship of Operation Dropbox. This is an official stand-down order. From this point going forward, there will not be any more organization from the Lions of Liberty. We are extremely grateful to all who stepped up and made our community proud. We are proud to have been a part of this op with you moving forward. Operation Dropbox is officially closed. The lawfare works, right? It's very damaging. It's very threatening to potentially face a lawsuit from a bunch of Harvard-trained lawyers who have endless funds and gobs of money to go after their political enemies. And so, of course, they are doing that, and it seems like it might be going to good effect. Unfortunately, the Republicans are still asleep at the wheel. Meanwhile, Biden is warning, now he's supposed to be speaking tonight. He's warning that democracy is under assault. He's calling for Americans to stand against political violence. He delivered a warning on Wednesday that Americans are under assault from election deniers, right? Who are running for office at all the top levels. Biden said, this intimidation, this violence against Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisan officials is a consequence of lies told for power and profit. Lies of conspiracy and malice. Lies repeated over and over to generate a cycle of anger, hatred, and vitriol. Now, this is hosted by the DNC, not the White House, so it's a political hack speech, which we're not going to cover here. The setting of the speech near Capitol Hill is meant to reference the J6 attack, an attack that they cannot possibly let go. And now they're squeezing every bit of this out of the Pelosi saga as well. So that's what he's talking about today. And I was thinking about maybe going over there and jipping it, but not going to do that because it's going to be the same garbage. Instead, let's turn our attention to another very important ruling that came out of Pennsylvania. Remember that when we talk about elections, we've got all sorts of different buckets that people fall into, and there are all sorts of different ways that people say that votes should be done with integrity, or where voting should be conducted with enfranchisement. We want as many people to vote is kind of an interest of America. We want everybody to participate. This is democracy, baby. Get out there and make your voice heard. But if people are suppressed, well, they can't do that. And so we have to sort of find the balance. We also don't want to enfranchise people who shouldn't be participating in that stuff because they've got no skin in the game. So we have to balance integrity versus suppression and enfranchisement. And one of the things that we've talked about here a lot is there are many ways to tweak the rules. One of them is to adjust the deadlines of elections. Should it be held on the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th? Should you say that anything mailed by the 3rd counts, even if it comes in by the 9th? Should the whole thing be moved because of COVID and because people are hysterical? Should we minimize some of the voting requirements in order to go register? Do you need to actually sign a document, or can you just kind of fill it out on the internet? All sorts of ways this can work. And what happens if there's a mechanical problem? Okay, you're filling out your mail-in ballot. You study this, you fill it out, you study the candidates, you make a good effort to get it right, but you forget something. There's an undated portion of this thing. You mail it into Pennsylvania, and it lands after the election is over. Do they count that ballot because you sort of incorrectly filled it out? Well, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ruled on this. The Republican Party of Pennsylvania suing the County Board of Elections, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court issued a ruling explaining what to do with some problematic ballots. Decided on November 1st, 2022, a per curiam opinion from the court, meaning it's kind of the court's opinion. It's not any particular judge. Out of Pennsylvania, they say, on this first day of November, upon review of the briefs of the parties, meaning the Board of Elections, the Republicans, and friends of the court as amici, the petitioner's request for injunctive and declaratory relief is granted. Whoa, what does that mean? It means the Republican Party, as the petitioners, they get their request granted in part and denied in part. All right, let's make sure we understand what's going on here. The Pennsylvania County Board of Elections are hereby ordered to refrain from counting any absentee and mail-in ballots received for the November 8th general election that are contained in undated or incorrectly dated outer envelopes. Oh, yes. Remember that we had a lot of problems with this. What happens if there were issues with a big bucket of ballots that came in? What do we do with them? Can we just throw them out? Can we just count them? Do we have to set them aside and process them at a later date? In this case, they are not counting them on election night. Refrain from counting any of them on election night. Now, doesn't mean that these are going in the shredder, but at this moment, they're not going to be included in the final totals. So, interesting outcome on this. Now, the court is evenly divided on the issue of whether failing to count violates the U.S. law. 52 U.S. Code, Section 10101, they say might be a federal statute that is problematic. So you can expect the feds maybe to step in on this. We'll see. We'll see if anything else happens. But the feds are, I would say, probably inclined to say that this is a violation of federal law. And the Supreme Court out of Pennsylvania is sort of split on this. So they say, we hereby direct the Pennsylvania County Board of Elections to segregate and preserve any ballots contained in undated or incorrectly dated outer envelopes. So anything is just all of that. Anything that's potentially problematic, they're just going to put it in a separate bucket. Very likely, right? This will continue to be litigated about in some way, shape, or form. And then we'll see whether or not those come back into the counts. So they tell us that the Republican National Committee, the RCCC, the Republican Party of Pennsylvania, all of them have standing. All of the other individuals, they're all booted out of there. They're dismissed with no standing. And we'll get some more formal opinions to follow. But Chief Justice Todd and Justices Donahue, they would find a violation of federal law. So they say, well, our opinion on this is if we don't count those votes, illegal. And if the other judges get their way, they'd say, no, it's no violation of federal law because they're invalid ballots. Now, I actually looked this up. I went over to the Pennsylvania Secretary of State website, and they show you the process there. And of course, probably most of us are not from Pennsylvania, but they have multiple ballots or sort of a multi-step process. You fill out a ballot, you put it in a secret envelope, then you put the secret envelope inside another ballot, and then you seal the ballot, and then there's a certification form on the outside of that ballot. So on the certification form, if they're not dating it, if it's improperly dated, one of the arguments is that, well, you can't confirm that that ballot was completed before the election took place. And what do you do about that? Because the last thing you want is, let's say, Oz beating Fetterman on election night, and then you have a bunch of people the next day after the election, suddenly filling out their ballots and sort of sending them in without a date or backdating them or something. What do you do? Now, if they backdate them, right, you could sort of have an issue with that with the postmark. But if it's not postmarked, you could have the argument that maybe the post office lost it or something before it lands, right? The voter didn't complete it. And so the argument might be you defer to voter intent and give them the benefit of the doubt and count the ballot. But the problem is that, right, now you have a mechanism by which somebody can close the gap. Somebody can just draft a bunch of ballots and fill in the deficit on election night, which, not saying that happened or anything like that ever before. All right, so take it easy. My YouTube censor gets squirrely when I start going down that road. But we also have some concerns in the election system in general. This poll, where did this come from? Politico reports that Americans have a lot of distrust in their elections and the federal electoral system. According to a survey that came out from the Morning Consult poll, they say that 60% of voters continue to trust the federal election system. That's it. Only 60% of voters. Now, that trust figure rises to 65% when respondents were asked about their own state's election system. If you ask about the federal system, people say, no. Big problems. But here locally, things are pretty good. Unsurprisingly, there's a partisan divide. They say Democratic voters, specifically, they trust the systems. The Democrats trust it, 80 to 79% so-and-so. While Republicans are at 43 and 56%. Republicans much lower. And when it comes to potential challenges to next week's results, they say 46% of Republicans and 51% think the GOP in the states might challenge the results. Now, we talked about this on our morning walk and talk for members on locals, but it feels like that's pretty low, right? If 60% of people trust the election cycle, and let's say we fast forward 2 years and the Republicans win big time, or we fast forward in 2024 and Trump wins, and we have several years of Hillary Clinton saying it was illegal and it was illegitimate and blah, 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 the whole saga again. Aren't we going to see that number go down dramatically? Aren't all those 80%, 79% of Democrats going to suddenly go into the toilet and they're all going to say illegitimate? And so when you add them to the right that thinks that a lot of this stuff is problematic, that I think drops the number below 60%, maybe below 50%. So what happens when half the country thinks the elections are problematic? Not good. But I guess that's the trajectory we're on. We're asking ourselves if the White House is going to do anything to prepare for what might be a chaotic election night. Karine Jean Pierre is asked about election contingencies. You guys have been saying for a long time that the violent, extreme, ultra, mega MAGAs are going to wreck the country, and elections are coming up. Do you have plans in case things go a little bit awry?
Given the number of Republicans who have said they won't accept the results and just the unpredictability of this election compared to others, is the White House doing any contingency planning for election night or the day after? Just people not accepting results.
National Guards.
How are you guys thinking about that?
FBI
so
raids.
A couple of things. I've been asked about this before, and I want to be clear and say this again.
Okay.
Americans should feel free, safe. They should feel safe going to the polls. They should. And so this administration has taken the issue of threats to the safety of voters and election officials seriously since day one. And the federal government has been working alongside state and local election officials and law enforcement to take the necessary steps to keep people safe.
What does that mean?
And again, there are agencies across the government that is working on that every day.
But what does that mean? Agencies working to keep Americans safe as they are working through the polls? What agencies? Who's involved? FBI? They're not very good at keeping Americans safe. They were responsible for protecting the homeland on January 6th, weren't they? I mean, there were people saying there were going to be protests. They couldn't figure out how to protect the Capitol building. So I'm not sure who's working on the contingencies or what their plan is, but Karine Jean Pierre says that Americans will be kept safe. You'll be kept safe, whether you like it or not, over there at the White House. Federal judge ordering Truth Social posts. Posts were complied with, and we will continue to follow. Thank you for joining us and subscribing wherever it is you're watching this.